Oh, Harold. You gotta read the fine print on those contracts, man. You know, when Harold walked into the room of authority and all of the Gorosei were standing around the Abyss Circle wearing cloaks, chanting something in praise of Emu, and then an eerie, spooky parchment appeared out of midair that Harold then had to sign in his own blood, maybe he should have realized something was up. Okay, so we didn't exactly see it go down that way. He just had the tattoo. But that's a question I legitimately have. How did he get the tattoo? I don't think it was a normal tattoo. I also don't think the top man just pulled out a temporary tattoo, licked it, and like put it on the back of Harold's arm. It's like, oh, here you go. It's like, no, I'm pretty sure there was some magic bullshit involved. And the whole idea of a contract is you sort of have to give your compliance along with it, whether that be in a signature or your verbal agreement or something, although the way that we saw the contracts work at Elbaf with Dory and Bragi, it didn't really seem to be that way. So that's the interesting thing of Emu's power. You don't need to agree to it. They're kind of referred to as contracts, but it seems very clear Emu can just turn you evil whether or not you agree to it or not. So whatever, I don't know. Harold got the tattoo somehow. What do you think, Barry? Okay, Barry's got his own thing going on right now. I don't know. I stopped asking questions a while ago. You do you, man. All right. So in the last chapter of One Piece, chapter 1167, Oda revealed the concept of the contract marks, okay? And so the Gorosei were explaining this to Harold. This is the mark that Harold received in the last chapter. It is the same mark that we saw Shanks have way back at the beginning of this flashback when he was in the bath with Gabon. We saw the one arm that he has since lost, but the arm is there at that point in time, and he has the contract, and it looks like this, okay? We have also seen some different marks on the God's Knights up until now. We have a different mark that we see Killingham have. Now, it's very important to mention, we see the tattoo on Shanks and on Harold. When it comes to Killingham, we saw it on the armband around him, okay? And it was a very different symbol. Not very different, honestly. And honestly, if you really look at it, it just looks like the first symbol just with like Kaido ancient giant-esque horns drawn on it, and that's pretty much it, okay? We also see a different tattoo with Summers that's way more elaborate, okay? Way more detailed in design and things like that. It takes up kind of like the upper part of his entire arm as opposed to these tattoos, right? So we also see in the last chapter, you kind of have to zoom in, but when we see the scene with Shamrock and Shanks standing next to each other, and they're wearing their fancy God Knights, you know, aristocratic outfits and things. They're also wearing armbands. Shanks's armband has the first level contract. Shamrock's armband has this one, the same one that we see on Killingham. So I'm assuming the God's Knights have them all tattooed on their body, and then they're also, when they're wearing clothing, have to wear the armband to represent which level they have, okay? So the three levels, the way that it's explained, in order to keep it simple, I refer to them as just the bronze level, the silver level, and the gold level, with bronze level being the one that has the least benefits, and the gold level package, the one that gives you frequent flyer miles and access to the private lounge, and you have tea parties with Emu every Sunday afternoon. You know, you get all of the different benefits, and the immortality package, and the regeneration, and, you know, maybe eternal youth. We're not really sure about that, okay? So, in the story, though, they're referred to as in the levels of the different depths of the ocean, okay? So in our world, there are 5 levels of the depths of the ocean. We have the epipelagic zone, the mesopelagic zone, the bathopelagic zone, the abyssal pelagic zone, and the hadopelagic zone, okay? And the lowest level being like the deepest ocean trenches, the highest level being surface, you know, shallow waters, okay? So in One Piece, we have the shallow contract, deep level contract, and the deep level contract, or sometimes referred to as the abyss contract level, okay? In Japanese, these are referred to as Senkai Keiyaku is the shallow level, Shinkai Keiyaku is the deep level, and Shinkai Keiyaku is the deep level. All right, so we're going to get back to that in a moment. The idea that there's 5 levels and we only see 3 levels of the contract here. Is Oda just simplifying them just for the sake of the manga? Or are there an extra 2 levels? Is there a platinum level? Is there a diamond level? Who knows? Are the Gorosei included in this? Is Eam themselves included in this? Well, that's what we're here to talk about today. So they mentioned that the first level, the shallow contract, this one right here, the symbol that resembles, a lot of people have compared it, honestly, to the symbol of the Earth. You will see that it's just a circle divided into 4 different quadrants, okay? And also people have brought up it's similar to the alchemical symbol for oxygen. A lot of the old school, elements, the stuff that, the ones that we knew about, like lead and gold and mercury and everything, had different alchemical symbols for them. Same thing with the 4 basic elements, earth, air, water, and fire. They had different element symbols that they would use way back in the day, back when alchemy was still in vogue, you know what I mean? So, Oda's probably taking reference from a bunch of different things here. It would make sense if he takes references from the earth and the symbols of, like, the planets because of the Gorosei being named after planets. It also makes sense that he would take references from alchemy and different symbols that were used a really long time ago. That works for me. So we don't actually know what this one does. Topman just described it as a minor pack or a lesser pact, okay? It's probably just like the entry level thing of just like, yeah, you don't get the immortality, you don't get the regeneration, you probably get the ability to travel through the abyss. Maybe that's like the entry level thing. We didn't see Harold using that power, but I'm assuming maybe he could. Maybe he can't summon the abyss by himself, but maybe if somebody else, like if Garling wanted to get in touch with him, maybe this is basically just like a homing device. It's a divination spell, basically. You have been marked, and now the Gods Knights and the Gorosei and Imu know where you are at all times and can open an abyss portal towards you and appear around you whenever they want, and they can maybe take you back through. You can't make your own, but you can be locked on as like a waypoint sort of thing, like a fence post kind of situation, I guess is the best way for me to describe it, okay? So we don't really know about that yet, but we know that this is the lesser one, and you are considered a devoted blade of God when you have this, all right? Gunko was one at God Valley. Harold is now. Shanks was also mentioned to get this as well when he returned to Marijois. They gave him this one, and if he proved himself, he would get the following contracts. Now, something interesting about the next 2. Let me actually pull that up right now. All right, I just wanted to pull up the official translation just so I could be sure. Okay, I'm just going to repeat this verbatim because the wording here is very important, the way that Topman is explaining this. The Shallows Covenant is but a mere trace of a bond, but the Depths Covenant and the Abyssal Covenant are reserved for only 13 exclusive individuals who can enter into a contract with the true God. Okay, so to break that down, you kind of have to like look at it a certain way because there's actually a couple of ways you can interpret this. So first off, because they're saying that this is a contract with the true God, I'm assuming Imu is not included in this. Imu is the one dishing out these contracts, these bronze and silver and gold packages, so Imu themselves is not included as part of the 13. Okay, the way that it's stated, it seems that the Depths Covenant and the Abyssal, so the silver and gold packages together add up to 13 individuals, okay? Because one way you can maybe look at it is the most prestigious, the gold level package. Only 13 people have ever achieved that thing. But the way that it's phrased here is no, there's only 13 individuals that have the silver and gold packages together, all right? Now, does this include the Gorosei? I would say yes. The way that I'm breaking this down right now is that the Gorosei, the 5 of them, have the Abyssal Covenant, the gold package. They've showcased abilities and they can do things that we haven't seen the other God Knights be capable of. They can regenerate the same as them, sure, but they have their aging process halted. Saturn is well over 200 years old and hasn't changed at all since that time. It seems like the Gorosei get this covenant when they are already pretty old. Like Saturn was an old man 200 years ago. Maybe let's say he was put into stasis or he was given the contract at like age 80. he's going to be age 80 physically for the rest of his life. I'm sure the Covenant gives him like the energy of a younger man, you know, like the virality of just like, yes, I am powerful again. But in terms of outward appearances, they stay the same. Oh, by the way, a little bit of a side thing. Shepherd Jew Peter, he actually does have gray hair canonically. It was shown on the Tankobon, because up until then, that the anime always depicted him with blonde hair, which always made him look the youngest. But no, he has gray hair, just like all the other Gorosei. So I'm kind of glad that to just kind of like make them all look similar. Like they got that Covenant, the gold package, when they were all, you know, much older, okay? And they probably showed their devotion to Imu very thoroughly at that point. They're also able to transform into their yokai forms. They very much clearly resemble mythical zones. I'm even going to include them in the mythical zone discussions that I'm going to be doing. But they've never been stated directly to have devil fruit abilities. And if Imu has some kind of dominance and can just like create devil fruit-esque powers, you know, like we've seen other ways. Like even Bonnie has a devil fruit ability without actually eating a devil fruit, right? The ways that they were, you know, performing like experiments and stuff on Ginny. So it's very possible that Imu could just be like, what yokai do you want to transform into? And Shepherd Jew Peter was like, I want to be a sandworm. I read Dune. And so Emu's like, yeah, all right. You have the power to transform into a sandworm now. It could literally just be that, because they've never been stated to have like, oh, you are the user of the mythical horse fruit, model Bakotsu or something. It's just Bakotsu or Gyuki or Itsumade or Hoki or Sandworm model. It's just those yokai names, okay? So could be something like that. That's the lowest level of the contract. Then when it comes to the silver package, that allows you to summon the Abyss and regenerate and do all that kind of shit that we see like Killingham and Summers do. Now, the only thing with that is that Killingham has a very clearly different symbol than both Shanks and Harald, so it's not the Shallows Covenant, and Summers has a tattoo that's way more elaborate. Now, it could always just be a tattoo. It could always just be a cool-looking tattoo that he wants to have, and, you know, it'd just be like, I'm just going to add to it. It might not have anything to do with the Covenant, okay? But it really does seem that unless you are the Gorosei, you don't get, like, the added abilities. Like, all of the abilities that we've seen, Garling and Summers and Killingham and all the other Gods Knights, they're able to regenerate. You know, even if they get their heads blown off or something like that, they can just glorp back together, right? And so that's their powers. And they don't have the ability to maintain eternal youth. Summers and Garling have aged normally at a normal rate than they have since God Valley. Now, Garling, notably, is now a Gorosei, implying that Imu has now upgraded Garling to the gold package, and now Garling will not age anymore, all right? So I'm not sure what the discrepancy is with these different symbols. We have the one with Harald, and then the one with Killingham, and then the one with the Summers. Maybe Summers is just a normal tattoo, okay? Because it really does seem that Summers' abilities, his loadout of powers that he has, are the same as Killingham, right? Or which are the same as like Garling had at God Valley. Seems to be that situation there. Now, here's another angle. What if the Gorosei are not included in that 13? Well, I could kind of see that too, because let's just crunch the numbers on this really quick here, okay? If there's only 13 individuals that have the silver and gold level packages combined, the Gorosei counts for 5 right there, so that we have 8 other individuals, all right? So, Summers is 1. Killingham is 1. We're going to exclude Garling because Saturn died, and then Garling took over as the Gorosei, so we'll just include that there. And let's see, who else with the... That was weird. All right, let's see, who else? We also have Gunko, although Gunko... We're going to get back to her in a minute, all right, because she seems to have special qualities, but at the very least, she might not have the silver. She might have the gold, too. That's the thing, because she does not age. So that's 3 right there. Then we have Shamrock, 4. So then that means there's only going to be 4 more Gods Knights, either with the silver or gold packages. And we've seen more than that at God Valley. We've seen Maffy, and we've seen the Yeti dude, and we saw the sexy lady with the long hair, and we also saw the dude wearing the cow skull. So Maffy, the lady, Yeti dude, Cow Skull, that's 4 right there. We also saw the Manmeyer lady that had the newsboy cap on. So there were definitely more than, the total number of 13 if you add them all up. Now, some of those God's Knight could have died or retired. I'm not sure if you can really retire. There is no retirement plan in Emu's army, you know what I mean? It's either you get promoted or you die. That's how it goes. Like, you get turned into a skeleton, right? So I don't think you could retire from this. Although maybe you could pass the powers on to the next individual. Maybe that's not impossible. Like, because if you do age like normal, I would assume eventually you would just die of old age, right? Like, if Summers doesn't get a promotion, he's still aging. He will just die someday, and then maybe pass his powers on to his son or something like that. That's feasible. That's possible, I suppose, right? And then also, you could have, like, some of those God's Knights maybe just had this. Okay, they just had the shallow covenant. Okay, not all of the ones that we saw might have been the silver and gold. Like the Manmeyer lady with the cap, she might have been a devoted blade of God as well. We knew Gunko was a blade of God at that time, but we don't know anything about the other ones, right? Was Maffy, which level of contract did she have? We don't know, but it seems to be you're only called a God's Knight when you get the silver or gold package. While you still have the bronze package, the shallow, you're not considered a God's Knight. You are called something different. You are called a devoted blade of God. So therefore, every single character that was referred to as a God's Knight during God Valley had at least the silver package, okay? So we could go even further than that if you want to do, like, since there are 5 levels of the ocean, maybe there's 2 other secret, marks that only individuals that Emu really deems worthy will receive, okay? So the Gorosei might have, the diamond level package or the platinum package. Then we have Gunko, all right? Gunko seems to be different than every other God's Knights and even other Gorosei in this regard. Gunko was a personal servant of Emu. We see Gunko back in the day, during 56 years ago, when Rox broke into the flower room. We saw Gunko there wearing, like, nun-esque attire, like the robes and things, tending to Emu. And we've seen other servants kind of being in Emu's flower room really quick. We've also seen a flashback of Gunko alongside Brooke, when she was a child and she was dancing to Brooke's song. Brooke was playing the violin. Okay. So I'm going to assume Brooke is 90 years old right now. I'm going to assume the way that this worked, because remember, Brooke is 90, but 50 years ago is when he died, or 52 years ago is when he died, because you have to factor in the time skip. So he was 38 when he died. Okay. So he was a pirate for many years before that. And then before that, he was the leader of a battle convoy for a particular kingdom in the West Blue, all right? I'm going to say Gunko is chronologically around 70-something years old for this to make sense, okay? Where maybe back when Brooke was still the leader of the kingdom, he would have been in his, like, late 20s, and then Gunko would have been, like, I don't know, 10 or something like that. So let's say Gunko is maybe 20 years younger than Brooke, and so that would make sense in terms of the timeline. So then by the time, so she would have been born 70-ish years ago, which means by the time that she was a servant of Emu, assuming she hasn't had the contract placed on her yet and she doesn't, like, age anymore, she would have been, like, in her 20s, okay? Something like that. And so then, shortly after, is when she received the contracts, and she doesn't age anymore. So she's stuck at, like, aged in her 20s and then to this current day, okay? But chronologically, maybe around 70, okay? I think that makes the most sense, okay? So why does she get the Eternal Youth Operation, not the Eternal Youth Operation, that's something different, that's the Op Fruit. Why does she get the Eternal Youth package with the contracts and the other God's Knights don't? Even Garling didn't get that. It seems something only reserved for Emu, because Emu has been around for like 900 years, or the Gorosei. Gunko is not a Gorosei. But we do know one thing. We know Gunko canonically has blue hair. Why does that matter? Because Lily canonically had blue hair. And Vivi canonically has blue hair. I think Emu has a particular type. I think Emu has a type. Yeah. So there's a whole bunch of things, especially why Emu possessed Gunko at Elbaf, right? Yeah, there's a connection between Emu and Lily. Some people have said Lily is actually Emu's body, like when we finally find out. Like, it really does seem Emu is shrouded in, like, shadow and darkness. Like, that isn't just something for silhouette for the audience. Emu literally is made out of, like, a viscous, shadowy cloak. Think Father from Codename Kids Next Door, okay? Or Grandfather from the movie, right? Think of that kind of character, and you have to physically, like, rip the cloak of shadows off of you, and there's, like, a human body underneath it or something like that, right? Think of it kind of something like that. So in that regard, we rip off the shadow cloak, and it turns out it's Lily's body the entire time, okay? And so, for whatever reason, Emu is just like, oh, you have blue hair. Well, I'll accept you into my entourage. You can be my servant, and if you prove yourself, I'll make you a God's Knight. And then eventually I'll give you the ability to no longer age. Because Gunko and the Gorosei and Emu are the only ones that have that power. Summers has been a God's Knight for well over 40 years. He didn't get that power. Gunko got that power, all right? So there's something unique with her. All right, Shamrock doesn't seem to have it, although Shamrock, you can't really tell until they actually start physically aging, because Shamrock is the same age as Shanks. He would be like 39, which in the One Piece world is the prime of youth, basically. But yeah, that's just like, I guess, a basic introduction to the ideas with the Abyss marks and things. And then you have the Abyss mark itself, like the pointed star and everything, and then that's the way that the Gorosei summon themselves. Maybe that is I might have been overthinking it too much. Maybe the Abyss mark is the deep level contract. The gold package is the Abyss mark. So let's just go with that. That probably makes the most sense, right? Instead of introducing another design here. Although maybe it is. Maybe there is something else there. And if the Abyss mark is something separate just for Emu's maybe personal sigil or something like that, right? So it could just be that. And also, I've mentioned this in the review, but the idea that the higher up you go on the contract, like you go up from bronze to silver to gold, you're going deeper and deeper and deeper down into the ocean, okay? Until you eventually reach the Abyss, or even the level below that, the Hadopelagic Zone, the Hadopelagic Zone, which is like Hades. You have now entered the underworld, where just a bunch of weird tube worms and microbial mats live down there. Have you ever actually looked into the kind of life forms that live all the way down at the bottom of ocean trenches? They're freaky. We got the angler fishes, of course, although they're not as impressive. They're actually like super tiny. Like, they look huge. Like, they look really intimidating, like in Finding Nemo. Yeah, they're actually like super tiny little guys. We also have Yeti crabs that are like really furry crabs that live at the bottom of the ocean. And the Dumbo octopus. That's my favorite one. Look at that little guy. Look at the Dumbo octopus. Just animals, marine life that are adapted to live under ungodly high amounts of pressure at the bottom of the ocean, okay? And so it's super cold and dark and lonely down there, as such is the fate for anyone that makes the contract with Emu. All right. Well, anyway, let me know what you think about the contracts and what each level does, and if we've seen all three symbols so far, if the Abyss counts as a symbol, what powers do you get if you just have the shallow contract? What powers do you get with the Shinkai Keiyaku or the Shinkai Keiyaku? Let me know. Let me know down below. Thanks for watching, everybody. This will be Teching 101, signing out.